Monday, July 11th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. As the heat continues over in the southern plains, the central plains, even parts of the northern plains, the heat also continued into the St. Louis area, which has been a major theme for the summer. The high-pressure ridge out west has covered the middle Mississippi Valley for much of the summer and has totally failed to make it to the East Coast for almost all of this summer. Really, all of this summer. The only time we did see some of that high-pressure ridge make it to the East Coast, the hot air hit the East Coast, was back in May and then every now and then in the month of June. But we really haven't seen much going on over there. In fact, when you head over to the New York area, it's really almost unbelievable how temperatures are just always in the 80s. But back here in the Midwest, St. Louis saw their final day, not for the season, of course, final day for the next 3 days, the final day of extreme heat in the St. Louis area. Its high temperatures made it into the mid and upper 90s, with dew points even in the low 70s for today. This ends the heat wave number 6, either 5 or 6. We're going to look back at the calendar and see. I think St. Louis represents it's a great representative if one wants to figure out exactly what is going on here in this country, in the mid part of the country. How hot is the heat this summer? Because you have certain cities which are just always hot, so that's not going to really do you any good. And you have other cities which have always been 91 degrees, like Miami Beach. It's always the same temperature over there. Recently, I don't even think it's been 91. You have the New Orleans area, which is being affected by these low pressure systems, which could turn into tropical storms at any moment. There's really lots of talk about that. And you have the upper plains, these flashes of brutal heat that move across the upper plains. The most remarkable part of the weather situation right now really is something that occurred in Nebraska. One of the cities in Nebraska had a temperature of 111 degrees just a couple days ago. I think that was McCook, Nebraska had 109 degrees. And, you can get a good cheer for that one. But for the city that was 111, it was Imperial, Nebraska. Much more than an applaud for that. We did indeed see some really warm temperatures. The last time a major podcast was given was back on June 26th, where we spoke about Fort Yukon, Alaska, possibly going into the low 90s. What's interesting is that the real original podcast, which I've noticed, whatever, I discovered the 90s right after I gave the podcast, and in the past I would have just left it at that. If I said 80s on the podcast, even though I found 90s afterwards, we can just leave it at 80s. High temperatures, a string of days of unseasonably warm temperatures in Fort Yukon, Alaska, according to the AccuWeather chart, which is usually, the AccuWeather climatological data is pretty accurate. It's not 100% accurate. I'm going to explain to you why it's not 100% accurate, but it's almost 100% accurate. High temperatures went into the mid-80s for that string of days, which the European computer model, about a week in advance, showed highs going into the low 90s. And that's a segment that got added on to the podcast later on. The original podcast did say highs would be in the mid-80s. Now, here's why the AccuWeather, at least the last I checked, why the climatological data for AccuWeather, for Wonderground, and for many of these websites is not on par with the National Weather Service. The reason is because what they do is they take hourly weather conditions and then they tell you what the highest temperature was amongst those hourly weather conditions. So basically, they have it right. Whatever the highest temperature was for the day, that's what the highest temperature was during the hourly weather conditions. The chances are that's going to be the highest temperature during the day. However, realize there are times where temperatures may go up a degree in between hours, and that may not register under hourly weather conditions. In fact, there have been times it's gone up 2 degrees and sometimes even more. But more or less, it's accurate. So high temperatures, again, we're in the mid-80s in Fort Yukon, Alaska. That's going all the way back by July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And we're now holding at a much later date. Well, first of all, taking a look at what the temperatures are today. Currently, we have a temperature, this was as of 10:51 p.m., 10:51 p.m., the temperature in St. Louis, says the National Weather Service, 86 degrees with a dew point of 75 degrees. The heat index is therefore 95 degrees. Now, we do have a wind, 10 mile per hour wind, which is going to impact that heat index, since the heat index chart was made for winds of 5.6 miles per hour. Going back an hour before that, we remained with a dew point of 75 degrees, and the hour before that, dew points were only in the low 70s. However, with the temperature of 90, so as of 20:51 p.m., that was 2 hours ago, that was, we would be saying, I guess the 9 o'clock p.m. temperature, we had a heat index of 99. 8 o'clock p.m., or 7:51 p.m., we had a temperature heat index of 103 degrees, as that temperature was 96, dew point 70, and you can see how the dew points are going up. Temperature was 99 before that, with a dew point of 67, pushing it to 104. That's 40 degrees Celsius for the heat index, but we remained with a significant wind. When you go back to the 3 hours, when was it? About 4 o'clock p.m. That's when we had light winds, and that's when the heat index of 104 would be more accurate. So we saw a high temperature today in St. Louis, Missouri, 99 degrees, and an overnight low of 73 degrees. We saw a high temperature yesterday, 89 degrees. Low temperature yesterday morning, 68 degrees. And so this indeed was pretty much a one-day heat wave for the St. Louis area. Let's go over the St. Louis area, the first heat of the season, which actually the first heat wave of the season went all the way back May 10th, when the temperature hit 90 degrees. This was a humid heat, especially by May 11th, very humid as dew points went into the mid-70s. Temperature hit 94 degrees on May 11th and 93 degrees on May 12th. That was our first string of 90s that occurred May 10th, May 11th, and May 12th in the St. Louis area. High temperatures ranged from 90 to 94 with low temperatures of 71 to 74 degrees. And the truth is, the heat really continued even after that. High 88 on the May 13th and high back up to 90 for May 14th. And temperatures remained in the 80s through May 19th, May 20th, going back up to 89 degrees. Those 80s didn't come to an end until May 21st. And the next time our temperature was to hit 90 was May 31st. But we're calling it for one heat wave in May. Temperature 90, 94, and 93 degrees. We did have a short one around Memorial Day weekend, but nothing really that significant. The next one was a very significant one, hit the St. Louis area June 11th as the temperature hit 90 degrees. June 12th, 94. June 13th, 100 degrees. Super humid stuff also. June 14th, 99. June 15th, 98. June 16th, 97 degrees. The cold front went through. We're calling it for an end of the heat wave after June 16th. The high temperature, again, 97 June 16th. But June 17th, temperatures do remain in the 90s with a high temperature of 92. We just have a one-day break of a high of only 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees on June 18th. Temperatures come back again very close to 90 for June 19th. That's heat wave number 2. Heat wave number 3 again hits June 20th, June 21st, June, 96, June 20th, June 21st, 98. We did not even tie the record for 1988. The record high 99 degrees. At one point, forecasters thought this was going to be a no-brainer with temperatures well into the hundreds. In fact, we had some mainstream forecasters forecasting highs in the mid-hundreds for St. Louis, June 21st. High was 98 degrees. Cooler air came in after that, but temperatures remained in the low 90s. And then the real one-day real heat hit in for June 25th. High temperature of 99 degrees on June 25th. And finally, significantly cooler air hits the St. Louis area June 26th to June 27th, June 28th. And we get ready for heat wave number 4. And, this was really something which was forecasted several weeks in advance. It was a couple days off as temperatures went back into the 90s, June 29th, June 30th, and then July 1st, temperatures peaked at 98 degrees. And then the cooler air comes in once again for July 2nd, July 3rd. Brutal heat returns July 4th. And this time, it's back to humidity. So we had the first 2 times very humid stuff back in May, very humid stuff back around by that June, the June 100 degree day heat, very humid stuff. But then the next 2 times we had a dry heat, and then for heat wave number 5, back on July 4th, July 5th, July 6th, we went back into very humid stuff. And really, that's been the pattern. That heat ended, but now we have heat wave number 6, which came in really just for today. As we said, the high temperature hit 99, I believe we said. 99 today. And the humidity, it didn't really start to get super humid until this evening. And then the heat will be returning. Heat wave number 7 for the end of the week. This time around, we have, once again, things go back to normal, maybe even a little bit below normal. We right now in the St. Louis area is right in between a high pressure ridge, which is over in Texas, and the trough on the East Coast. The East Coast is really lucking out if you consider a lack of heat as being lucky. Swimming weather continues for the East Coast, temperatures in the 80s. But the real brutal, extreme, super stuff is in Texas, where temperatures are well into the mid-hundreds, upper hundreds. We even had low 100 in teens, and that weather is expected to continue. The Dallas National Weather Service informs us that triple-digit heat is expected for the remainder of the week. But I think, again, the real highlight here is Imperial, Nebraska, and McCook, Nebraska. Maybe that's what it was. 109 and 111. One of those cities hit 111. One of them hit 109. And those cities are just, you barely even notice them because there's so much talk about Texas. Kansas is mentioned briefly, but, that's brutal stuff. That's already almost like Dust Bowl year stuff. In Nebraska, temperatures going into the 100 in teens. This is heavy-duty stuff. We have some more hot weather developing off in the Pacific Northwest the next 3 days, at least for Tuesday and Wednesday. Perhaps Thursday as well. The Midwest could look forward to a cold front that's going to be pushing through. It already has pushed through with high temperatures in the 80s. That includes not only St. Louis, not only Chicago, but even includes the St. Louis area. Minneapolis also. And, in the International Falls, of course, you have highs in the 70s, but the heat returns by Friday, Shabbos, and Sunday, with those temperatures going back into the 90s, especially in St. Louis for Shabbos and Sunday. And there is a tropical type of system, or a low-pressure system, right outside New Orleans that is just stationary. Just the European computer model shows it to be completely stationary, and it's being monitored. It's certainly being monitored to see if there will be any type of tropical storm development with that system. Normal high for today in Chicago, 85 degrees. That's the peak. Normal low, 67 degrees. Record high today, 97 degrees. That occurred in the Dust Bowl years, 1936. Again, the Dust Bowl year, but the weather station was on the lake back then, and it still hit 97 degrees, record low 50 degrees that occurred in 1996. Lake water temperature, says the Chicago Tribune, on the shore 64 degrees, the crib temperature 70 degrees, waves today and tomorrow 1 to 3 feet. High temperatures yesterday, we said in today we're 99 in St. Louis, but high temperatures yesterday were in the 80s in St. Louis, also 80s here in the Chicago area, 88 at Midway, 86 at O'Hare, and only 77 at the lakefront. And the coolest spot was Aurora, where temperatures went into the low 50s in the morning. 6 to 14 day temperature outlook, above normal temperatures for almost the entire Midwest, and the 1.56 inches of rain recorded at O'Hare Airport from July 4th through July 6th was the 7th wettest on record for the date since 1871. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a wonderful night and have a wonderful week.